everybody, this is JJ Outlaw, better known as the Gourmet Goober. And have you ever thought about starting your own podcast? When I was trying to get this podcast off the ground, I had a lot of questions like, how do I record an episode? How do I get my show into all those apps that people like to listen to? Hey, how do I even make money from my podcast? Well, the answer to every one of these questions is really simple. Anchor. Anchor is a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing your podcast. Best of all, it's 100% free and ridiculously easy to use. And now, Anchor can match you with great sponsors who want to advertise in your podcast. This means that you get paid to podcast right away. In fact, that's kind of what I'm doing right now by reading this ad. I love Anchor. It makes it super easy from start to finish. The whole process can be done from the app, from recording to distribution. I just adore it. So if you've always wanted to start a podcast and while making money doing so, just go to anchor.fm/start to join me and the diverse community of podcasters already using Anchor. That's anchor.fm/start. I can't wait to hear your podcast. Hi, welcome back to the Gourmet Goober. I'm JJ Outlaw.
And I am T Outlaw, Big Daddy.
And you are listening to the Gourmet Goober podcast, the podcast for people who love their food seasoned and their tea popping hot. You can catch me on social media via Twitter. That's the best way to get a hold of me. I'm at JJ Outlaw. You can also find me on Instagram at Gourmet Goober. And where about you, Big Daddy?
You can find me at T Outlaw Josie Wells on the Instagram and just T Outlaw at T Outlaw on Twitter.
On the Twitter machines, as the young people call it.
Yeah, like the tweet me.
And we are so excited to have the second episode of the Gourmet Goober being taped.
We survived number 1.
Woohoo! Yes. So this has been a crazy week. I mean, we've been planning the Gourmet Goober and taping this show for quite a while now. And it's something that we've been talking to as a way to continue our blog, which is celebrating our 6th year this year, mainly covering food and foodie culture in the Northwest Indiana, Chicagoland area. And so when we decided to do the blog, we've had a couple starts and stops, and when we started to do the podcast, rather, we had some starts and stops. And just over the past week, just to see all the changes with the podcast was really crazy. When we submitted it, and every time I saw it was going up on a different platform, like Spotify, I would text Big Daddy like, "Oh my God, we're on Spotify!"
Yeah, I would randomly get these texts at work or on the train, be like, "We're on Spotify. We're on Google. We are on Stitcher."
Stitcher was kind of big, though, because Stitcher's the one that I've been listening to when I first started listening to podcasts years ago. And I was like, dude, I'm on Stitcher. I can add myself to my favorites.
It's like now you're playing with the big boys and girls. It's like now we're playing with the champions now. We can get, now we can compete. So some of you people on Stitcher, we're coming after you, and we're coming hard.
Dude, it's only our second week, okay?
I know.
I think they're okay for now.
We have to aspire to big things. Come on now.
But for those of you out there who it's been really cool, like the ladies at Cookin' the Gooch, I mentioned them last week. And I tweeted them and said, hey, you guys inspired us to do a podcast. And Cook and Gooch, they were really fabulous in tweeting us back and gave us some great feedback because I was worried about the audio. But yeah, I'm just super, super psyched. It is weird to listen to yourself being recorded because I studied broadcast journalism, as I think I mentioned in the last episode. But it's been forever and a day since I saw myself on television or heard myself on the radio. So just listening to the podcast, because no matter if you're tempted to or not, you're going to listen, right? Because it's you and you're on the Stitcher. But I was like, oh my gosh, I sound kind of like a Midwestern Valley girl.
Oh, I mean, like, really? I mean, like, you sound like a Valley girl? I don't think so.
No, I think so. I think I have that weird, like, I call people dude, and I, I don't know. I just, as much as I try to get rid of my Midwestern accent, I think I hear it. Although it's not so much strong as Chicagoan, unless, of course, I say things like brats.
I mean, like the Brats, the Dogs, the Bears, the Bulls, the Cubs,
Well,
the Sox.
yes, I'm not quite there yet.
Yeah, I know. I understand the dick of pork chops. I see them. I understand them. When the coach blesses you with a heart attack, you know it's some good food. You know what I'm saying? Okay, I'm sorry. That was a little New York, but a little bit Chicago. You know what I'm saying?
What are you doing?
I don't know. Every once in a while, I'm sorry. I keep thinking about brats and, being at a Cubs game with, a deep dish. I see what you're saying.
Okay.
I'm sorry. My accent kind of went all over the place. I apologize.
Let me just say it is late, people. So if it sounds like we're slap happy, which I don't know if everyone knows what slap happy is, it's kind of like a Midwestern term, which means that it's been kind of a long day or something, and you get to that like giggle zone. That's where we are. So maybe we should warn people first about that.
And this is without inebriation of any sorts.
No.
This is literally off drinking like sodas and water.
This is pretty much us sober.
Yes. So take that you will.
So as always, we like to start the podcast by talking about the big things of our week. So, Big Daddy, how was your week?
How was my week?
Yeah.
God blessed me and let me survive to this point, so I give him all good graces and, I give him the praise. So most importantly, yes, to the fact that I'm here, I had a good week. For the most part, tried new things, but also at the same time, the most important part of these weeks, especially being an American citizen, is survival.
Amen
so, yeah,
to
I
that.
give blessing for that.
That wasn't scripted, y'all. That was truth. And I think I agree with you 100%. It's been a crazy week, especially at work. Part of what I do is grant writing, and I had 2 big grants that I'm working on, and I had a site visit, and it's to the point where, leaving work, some days I would just sit in my car and like, okay, am I making it? Am I in my car? Am I on my way home? And then, like I said last episode, I have a long commute, so you have to psych yourself up because you got to go into Chicago traffic, and I drove all week. Not that was a bad thing. Actually, the drive was pretty cool, which is great. But no, outside of that, my week was fantastic. You know why? Because finally, after a year waiting, Endgame came this weekend! Yes!
The Avengers Endgame. Part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which I now have to admit. I told my wife in the movie theater that I, being me, being the non-geek, disciple of, the Stan Lee forum, I've been messing up the MCU, was it anagram or whatever?
You didn't know what MCU stood for.
Yeah, I did not know what MCU truly stood for.
Which was a shock, because I'm like, how could you be married to me? A comic book geek since I was 4. Because just to give you guys some background, my father, when he was a child, collected some major comic books. Like, back in the day, I was lucky enough to see the original detective comic book that Batman appeared in. My dad had that. He had the original Doctor Strange. He collected a lot of DC, but some Marvel books as well. When I was a kid, and the X-Men was that big Fox cartoon show that came on every Saturday. That was my dad and I's thing. We watched that every weekend together growing up. So comic books were always big. So when you confess you didn't know what MCU stood for, it was one of those moments like, oh my God, who did I marry?
Well, I knew it was Marvel. It was just, and I kind of gleaned into the part of the universe, but yeah, I admit I failed very horribly on the C. I took the C, and well, apparently I ended up taking the L. So yes, I apologize, but at least I didn't spout out to the universe and really mess up with the geeks, because as I have learned from you nice people that are devotees to the Marvel and those, when you mess up the difference between Marvel and you confuse it with the people who are devotees to DC, the other will let you know about it, and let you know about it with a quickness.
They are not the same. And
I get it.
And I have to say, okay, having grown up the way I've grown up and reading some of the stuff I've read, I happen to like some DC properties. I really, truly do. Mm-hmm. I haven't seen Shazam yet, but I am so excited to see Shazam because even before it became a DC property, like I said, my dad had some old school comic books in that box he told us to stay out that we went into anyway. And one of them was the old-fashioned Shazam back when he was known as Captain Marvel. Mm-hmm. And so just looking at some of that stuff, and seeing how they did it, I loved Aquaman and all of that. I happen to believe that Marvel movies are better, but DC's animated movies are way better. So if you ever see the classic one I really love is Batman Mask of the Phantasm is one of my all-time favorites. Then, growing up and having that love of comic books and seeing something like the Avengers where all of your favorite comic book properties and some that you're not really big on, but it's still fun to see them part of the show, come together as you see in the Avengers. This is like my 8-year-old geeky, blurty self's dream. So we're not going to do any spoilers. No worries. So if you're listening like, oh my God, I haven't seen Endgame yet. Don't worry.
Yeah, we'll try not to jack it up for you. We will try to stay spoiler free in this zone here.
We will definitely stay spoilers free. That said, at some point, maybe in the coming weeks, we will discuss it, but not now, obviously, because we want to give everyone a chance to enjoy the movie. That said,
don't come after us.
Yes, don't come after us, because we're going to give you a head start, and we'll give you plenty of warning before we talk about it. My journey to see the Avengers, though, was kind of eventful in and of itself.
Adventurous?
Adventurous, because...
Okay. How did this occur?
You know how it occurred, because I wasn't going to put any... I wasn't going to leave it to fate whether or not we're going to get tickets. I got our tickets in advance, yo. I did, because I was just like, this is it. I was one of those people that I was like, Infinity War took me out. Like the ending of Infinity War, I was mad for so many reasons. And I hope you guys have seen Infinity War, so I'm going to spoil a segment if you haven't, but God knows you should probably know by now about how it ended, and some of your faves, of course, did not survive Infinity Wars. So, for example, being someone who loved Black Panther so much, and, even tonight, I even told my sister-in-law, Black Panther is not a comic book movie. It is a movie that just so happens to have superheroes in it, but it is too important in terms of talking about the African diaspora and things like that to not see this movie. And I've convinced so many people in my life, people that I know are not as nerdy as me, like my mother, for example, you got to see Black Panther. And I convinced her to see Black Panther. She loved it. She cried. We had a bonding moment. And then you see Infinity War, and then, T'Challa doesn't survive. And Shuri doesn't survive. And they basically... And
Doctor Strange and the Spider.
Yeah. I wasn't really hurt when Doctor Strange didn't survive. I'll be honest. Growing up, my dad loved Doctor Strange, and that was not my favorite Marvel property. But that said, it was really hurtful to see people that had been part of my life for so long, on the screen and then have them vanish. And it's just like, oh man. And especially going back to Black Panther.
She took this Black Panther thing hard.
Yo, they just opened up Wakanda to the world. And they're like, okay, sure, we can let Bucky hang out and convalesce while we do our thing. And then when you know it, Wakanda gets effed up.
They ran through Wakanda like it was like, okay, we're going through our second, pillaging of Africa again. Like, they just came through and just tore Wakanda.
They just jacked up Wakanda and killed Shuri and T'Challa. I was like, yo, F this stuff, man. So Infinity Wars took me out.
Yeah, I do admit there were a lot of people who left Marvel's and Avengers Infinity War shook. I mean, like, people walking around like they had battle damage, like, in shock.
Well, you remember when we saw it, right? Everyone in the theater was just, like, dead quiet at the end. Like, I've never seen a Marvel movie where there wasn't applauding or anyone. Everyone was like, the hell just happened?
Yeah, there was a whole lot of people. There were a whole lot of people who did leave a movie, or at least stood up and walked out.
Yeah.
Yes, looked like they had gone through something, battle damage, just kind of in shock.
Yeah, so I was waiting for Endgame for a long time. I saw, excuse me. Sorry about that. I saw Captain Marvel before the movie came out, so I was already prepped and psyched.
We also went back and made sure we checked out all the Ant-Man, all the other, loose ends of Marvel Cinematic Universes, or the universe,
right,
before we got to this movie.
Yeah, so, but going back to what I said before about the journey to see it, so I got my tickets way early. And my intention on Friday, because we got tickets to the 9 o'clock show on Friday night, and I'm like, I want to see it on Friday, because the longer I wait on social media, I'm going to have to stay off of social media, which is kind of hard because it's part of my job, where I'm just going to have to spoil spoilers, because if I read a spoiler, I'm going to be really pissed. So the plan was to leave work at 5. I took the train in, take the train, be home by 7, and then eat a little something. And then this movie is 3 hours long, so you want to give yourself time to prepare for that, because there's no getting up for the bathroom. There's no snack break. Once I'm in that chair, I'm not leaving the chair until the credits are over. So that was my intention. What actually happened was, I was on my way to leaving, and then one of my bosses,
what happened?
She called me in because she wanted some help with social media. So it's like 10 till 5. I talked to her and I said, hey, if I'm going to be here till about 5. If you need anything, let me know. So right at 5 o'clock, she calls me in her office again. She had a question, so I helped her. And then I was getting ready to pack up. And then at 5:10, she had another question. And by the time I left, it was 5:30. And I was like, dang, I am a half an hour by public transportation to where I catch the train in Millennium Station, because I work in Humboldt Park. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to take a Lyft. And so I went into my Lyft app and ordered the Lyft. And I love Chicago, but there's certain parts of Chicago you're not going to see a taxi drive by. It's frequently, as you might think, in some of the western and southern suburbs, or neighborhoods are one of them. Mm-hmm. And so I thought, okay, fine. I will take a Lyft. The Lyft was at least 6 minutes away, and it was projecting that I would get there after the train leaves. So I'm like, well, dang, I might as well take the train. And the Lyft was on, accelerated pricing. Sometimes when it's, price higher if they're, busy or expecting, like if there's an event in town or something, I'm like, well, shoot, I might as well just pay for public transportation. So I get on the bus, take the bus, get on the blue line, take the blue line where I was going. I get to the train station just as my train was pulling away. So that meant I would not leave on a 5 o'clock train. I'd have to leave the next train, which leaves at 7, which means I didn't get to where I was going until 8:20. The movie started at 9. So I texted my husband and I was like, hey, meet me at the train station, pick me up at this time. And oh, by the way, we have to go directly from the train station to the movie theater because the movie theater is, 20 more minutes away from where we were?
Yes.
And I knew it'd be like crazy in terms of parking and everything. So I was just like, okay, fine. So by the grace of God, we get there initially with 20 minutes to spare. And I was right, because wasn't parking like insane over there?
Yeah, for the most part, the parking lot was it was full of people. But I mean, like, wasn't a large line, like, walking up.
No, it wasn't a large line walking up. But as soon as we opened the door, the showing we were going to sold out. Like, literally, it was flashed on the screen. So I'm like, yes! Bought my tickets early.
Yeah, we did luck out in that portion.
So we get, the lady helped us with the tickets. I showed it on my phone. So then we thought, okay, I'm starving, right? Because I haven't had a chance to eat dinner or anything like that. Nothing's gone as planned. So let's just get some popcorn and a couple of sodas, which I will nurse because I am not getting up during this movie. There is no pee breaks for me. And so we get to the counter, which wasn't busy. But the problem was, it took them the rest of the 20 minutes in filling our order.
Yes, I was quite intrigued, if you will, by the fact that we did everything right on the lead up to, get to the concession stand to purchase all the, to purchase the popcorn and 2 drinks to get inside. But in order to partake, in order to get the popcorn and, get the drinks filled up, we had to go through one young lady, and as she was saying, like, there were a lot of people. There wasn't a whole lot of people in line, but and there were a lot of people behind the counter in the different counters. But the wait to fill said order for just a large popcorn or medium popcorn and 2 drinks was a whole 10 minutes, and I'm like, I'm sorry, just to get a popcorn and 2 drinks, and it takes that long. I could definitely tell that was a little longer than I was being patient for. And especially for Jennifer, who was definitely starting to show her displeasure. Yeah, it was problematic. We're just gonna say it like that.
Well, like he said, there was at least like 70 million people behind the counter. And there wasn't a lot of people in line, but they were just moving really slow.
It wasn't like they were old people either. These are all like,
they were
18, 19-year-olds. Yeah, like, feel like, some of you people are like able to bust a move and, be able to preset this popcorn ready to go. But they were definitely into the freshness compound that you get in your stuff. And, you're going to get it. And you're going to get it when we give it to you.
Yeah, our person, Olivia, wasn't really into moving. And to be fair,
damn, you ready to bust out Olivia already? Like, poor little Olivia.
I noticed Olivia's name on her name tag. That said, I know that a lot of theaters I've read that and this was an AMC theater, but there's some AMC theaters that are open like 24 hours because people are just going crazy over Endgame. So maybe she's been there for all day and she was just like exhausted.
Yeah, whatever. This is prime time, baby. We bringing your cash to you. We put down money on your order. Bill my order and get it moving. This is like an assembly line. All you kids behind the counter, you can tell that I was getting warmed up at this point. Like, give me my food and let's.
To be fair, Big Daddy was not rude to her, but I was kind of worried that I was a little salty, shall we say, because after taking like 12 minutes to finish fill our order,
Mm-hmm.
She's like, oh my gosh, and there's anything else and I can give you a receipt? And I was like,
Nope.
No. And she gave me this look like,
Oh, God.
okay, enjoy Endgame.
It's like angry black lady ready to snap it off. Oh, Lord, she's getting ready to whip it. I thought Jennifer was getting ready to whip, take the earrings off and, like, put on some Vaseline. But no, Jennifer just gave her a quick discern. No, we're good. Bye.
And I must have given her a look, and she was just like, oh, this lady's not playing.
No.
Let me just give her popcorn and soda and, enjoy the movie. So we got there. We managed to get the last of the decent seats. It was a great movie, so if you guys have not seen Endgame yet, first of all, definitely see it.
All 3 hours.
All 3 hours. It was worth it. I think it was a beautiful fitting end to the Marvel Universe. There were some surprises. I'm not going to spoil them. Some tears were shed, at least on my part, because Stan Lee's last appearance in a Marvel movie was during this film, and, it just took everything for me. I'm one of those people, and my husband can attest to this. Every time I see Stan Lee, I know it's stupid, but every time I see him in his cameos in his previous movies, I'm like, oh my God. And he looks at me like, yes, I know that's Stan Lee now. You have informed me of who Stan Lee is. I get it.
Yes.
So seeing him in his last one, it was kind of emotional for me. But no, it's a great, great movie.
No, that's fine. You can, I get the gist now. You get to be in all your Stan Lee feelings. I'm sure during the movie I had a couple, feelings too.
But outside of that, wow, it's just been kind of a crazy weekend.
Well, let's just
Chicago with
say,
the weather.
No. Jennifer got a chance to go through all 3 hours of the Avengers Endgame. However, I had to hit that concession stand, one more time because.
Look, I warned you.
No. Hey. If I'm gonna stand on these grounds, I'm gonna stand here and I'm gonna give y'all how good of a husband I tried to be.
Yes, he was a good husband because halfway through he knew that I was hungry and we managed to go through the popcorn. And so he got up. He didn't even, because I think at one point he was going to ask me, no, you asked me if I needed anything before you got up. And I thought that you were going to ask me to go to the concession stand. And I gave you a look like, bro, did I tell you I'm not leaving?
Yeah.
And then you're like, no. Do you need something? I'm like, no, I'm good. So then you get up and then you bring me pizza because you knew I was hungry.
Yes, I went back to the concession stand because I knew, with the whole subtext of the 3 hour extravaganza that was going to be Endgame, and I knew that my wife was going to be well vested in this, I only gave her the assignment of if there were things I missed to fill me in later. But my job was to, because she didn't get a chance to eat, I was going to try to procure something a little more substantial and or because there were, with it being a 3 hour movie that they had put out these little feelers about at what points during the movie should you take a break to go to the restroom.
Yes,
or
have
take
you guys
a little
seen
quick
that?
break. Yes.
There are some websites, it's so crazy. There are some websites out there that actually have pee guides, which I love that name.
Yeah, I was trying to be cleansed about it, but yeah, go with it.
When it's just like, okay, this is what they're talking about. I can go take a break. Okay, I'm ashamed to say I actually did study the pee guide when I was on the train coming back home. Just in case, because I'm old and, going to the bathroom when you need to is a thing. But that said, I was just like, nah, I'm just going to power through this. So when he got up and he brought back pizza, I was just like, my man.
No.
I married well.
Yes. I took the L too because in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, I didn't really study the guides, but at least I was trying to keep, with the pacing of the movie in parts, that I was going to do a couple things and be able to, be back within a reasonable amount of time, a few minutes, if will. That being said, I went, did my thing, got a drink, and tried to get something different than like the initial popcorn hit with the pizza. I was gonna get like some nachos or pretzels or whatever, but I was like, no, I'm just gonna try like a personal little pizza and some M&Ms. That, however, took a whole 18 minutes because once again, it started to get a little filled up at the concession stand, and
I
we
guess
have to wait
everyone read
for
the same P guide, so they all decided to take a break at the same time.
yeah. But other than that, and this is for since there were like 5 other showings around the same time. They were all trying to get their little vestiges too. But it took me a while to get it because I had to wait for the pizza and the
I'm surprised they
M&Ms.
just cooked the pizza fresh on the spot, too.
I was a little surprised about that too.
Because I thought that they were just going to hand you like a slice. Well, you surprised me with a pizza, but after the movie, I was like, "Oh, that was a nice thought." And let me just say again, thank you for that because that was really hella thoughtful. And I was just like, "Why were you gone so long?" And he said, "No, when you order the pizza, they bake the pizza there, and it's about 10-minute wait." And I was like, "Dang," because I've been to theaters before that have like the slice of pizza in the burner, and they
Hmm.
just hand it off, and that's what I thought they did, but no.
Yeah, they were busy burning the popcorn.
No, but yeah, it was a good movie. Big Daddy was awesome in bringing me his wife's sustenance.
That's right.
Definitely worth it. I'm not sure how worthy the pee guides are because I didn't get up to the bathroom. But if you want to, they're pretty consistent on when you want to go. And I'm not going to mention them because, again, to do that would give a slight spoiler. You could Google it and find it. So we saw Endgame this weekend. And then the other thing we did, which I was really excited about amongst the craziness of the Chicago weather, because earlier this week I was wearing a sweater with no coat. Today it snowed. What the hell's with that? I don't know. Um, but amongst the weather, we found time to hit up our local bodega to get some Philly steaks.
Yes, we did. We partook of the Philly steaks.
And sorry about that, guys.
Sorry, just doing a little alarm work. Anyway, yeah, we did check up we did hang with the bodega. We did. We were gonna get the deep fried, but then we thought, cholesterol killer.
They actually have deep fried Philly steaks at this bodega in Gary that we go to. And it's like a true bodega, right? Because they have like those old school like candies and stuff, and um, like the now laters. Remember the chewy ones and the stuff you can't find anymore.
Yes.
But yeah, and sorry about the alarm going off, you guys. If you're listening at home and wondering what that was, um, and why didn't we get the deep fried? It was because we were worried about our health.
Yes. Generally, we're both 45 years old, and
well, I'm not 45 yet.
I'm sorry. I'll be the old man then.
Yes. I'm a few months away. Who am I fooling?
But yes, we went to the bodega because I felt I went to grab a lunch, and while we were in there, we said we wanted some Philly steaks, and yeah, they offered fried deep Philly, but I said no. No, actually, I was thinking about it. I was contemplating, but Jennifer said, yeah, it's probably not in our best interest because
we want to live.
Yes. That would be good.
But, and if you guys aren't familiar with what a bodega is, and they go by different names, I've been known to call it a bodega since I moved to Gary. But
the corner store.
Basically, it's kind of like a hood version of Walmart. So, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, Walmart with like a lot less room and nothing in it, plus a cat in the back.
Yeah, only ours don't have a cat in the back. I've never been to one of these stores in the region.
The cat froze.
Have a cat, but it's kind of like a crazy place though, because this particular one you can get like meats, so you can get meat packs, so you can get like storage of like chicken and fish and things like that. They have all sorts of like vegetables, But then you can also get like a wife beater and some hair bundles if you want to braid your hair.
Yeah, you can also get, if you want to get, you can cash your check.
Yeah, you can cash your check. You can send money.
Yeah. If
money
you
order.
talk to the dude in the back, you can get a couple Philly blunt. Maybe.
Yeah, they have the hookup for that.
Yeah, you got a dude, who could hook you up with, like I said, some do-rags.
They have all sorts of unhealthy, snacks drinks you can get.
You can get all kind of chips, dips, whips.
Like I said before, they have that old school candy. And then they have an overabundance of what Big Daddy and I were talking about that we like to lovingly call hood snacks.
Yes.
And hood snacks, if you're not familiar with it, hood snacks are just like stuff that you won't find. And I grew up in the suburbs of Indianapolis, so I know this to be true.
I moved on the east side.
Yeah, I grew up on the east side of Indy. And, I moved when I was like in junior high to, this burb that's part of Warren Township. So it was, pretty different. And there's certain things that I could find in my old neighborhood that I couldn't find here. So, and it ranges from like Funyuns to my new favorite thing now. They actually have chips that are called Rap Snacks.
Yeah, we had a nice little conversation about the Rap Snacks.
Yeah, I'm obsessed with Rap Snacks. So the idea, if you haven't seen it, this guy came up with this brilliant idea of having rappers come up with their favorite flavor of like chips and popcorns and things. So when you see the Rap Snack, and Rap Snacks definitely epitomize everything that's a hood snack, right? So for example, they had like a Cardi B Rap Snack that was like honey dripped buttered popcorn.
Yeah.
They had like a little boozy Rap Snack that is kind of like a Louisiana Heat one.
Lil Boosie. Yeah, dude.
Lil Yachty. Yachty?
Yeah, I don't know who that is.
Lil Yachty. He actually has a Rap Snack that's called Ooh Wee, which I just love.
The Ooh Wee?
Yes, you do it way better than I do. But I'm obsessed with like the Migos Rap Snacks.
Yeah.
Because all of their Rap Snacks have a dab of ranch in them. And for me, growing up in Indianapolis, so even though I like to say all the time, I like my food season, but I did grow up where I grew up, where unfortunately it wasn't very diverse. And there are certain odd things that you will find in those spaces in Indianapolis and certain parts of the Midwest that you won't find anywhere else.
Y'all hit the ranch. Let's just say it like that.
Ranch is kind of like our everyday condiment.
Ranch is like ketchup.
Ranch is like ketchup, yes. So, like when I met Big Daddy years ago, he would be like, dude, you're dipping your pizza in ranch. And I'm like, yeah, and I'm not ashamed of that.
It's like, what the hell is wrong with you? Ranch. I'm like, come
ranch.
On,
ranch on your fries. Ranch with your pizza. It's basic as hell, and it's great.
Not just ranch. Buttermilk ranch.
Oh yes.
I've been put on like, probation for bringing the wrong ranch in the house.
No. I have informed you that in this house we eat the buttermilk ranch, because if you don't get the buttermilk ranch,
you get kicked the hell up out. You sit outside with the pup.
You know what it is? There are different companies that make ranch. It's not just Hidden Valley Ranch, right? But there's different companies. Sometimes if you don't get the buttermilk ranch, it's more sweet than savory. It's like sweet mayonnaise. It's so disgusting. And so I'm like, no. For that real ranch flavor that you're looking for when you're dipping your fries in it, you need the buttermilk ranch. You look horrified even now.
It's okay. I'm sorry. I thought it was just some crap you put on salad.
No.
Okay.
No, it is so not the crap you put on salad only. Ranch is a way of freaking life. And the fact that the Migos in their Rap Snacks, they put a dab of ranch on everything, from their sour cream and a dab of ranch chips to they even have popcorn, white cheddar with a dab of ranch. I want to say, yes, Migos, you feel me. you have the ultimate hood snack.
So does this mean Cardi B is hitting the ranch too?
Look, if she's with Offset, apparently so, because they like their ranch with everything.
Yeah. That explains a lot.
So I felt validated when I saw that in the store, because I'm like, it's hood snacks, but it has ranch in it. So it has the two sides of me together. I'd like to say I'm suburban, but I love my ratchet.
Okay, so basically you have come across as, oh, I have a little valley, but a little bit of the hood.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So I can appreciate love and hip hop, but I can do so watching the show, dipping my French fries in ranch dressing.
So you're like a leprechaun in the hood. I get it. I feel you. I'm down. I'm hip. I'm hot.
I don't know how to feel about that, because Leprechaun in the Hood is a horrible movie.
Yeah, but they don't have my lucky charms, so that's okay.
And Ice-T was in it too, dude.
Hey,
Dude.
yeah, dude, gotta get them checks. You gotta take care of Coco and whatever kid you got. Yeah,
Baby T.
you gotta take care of them perms or whatever perm he used to have.
So anyway, we hit up the bodega. We had probably the best Philly snacks, Philly cheese sandwiches around. Certainly the best in the region.
All right, for all you kids out there that are not from the Midwest or whatever, apparently we are quite intrigued with the concept of the chopped cheese and like partaking of one. We have not partaken of chopped cheese, and for all you kids out there, I'm sorry, this is a sad note. If anyone would like to send us a sample of chopped cheese, we're definitely down to listen.
Or a good recipe for chopped cheese, because we almost made chopped cheese before we decided, let's just go and get the Philly. So we got the Philly. They hit us up with some mild sauce, which, speaking of hood snack, French fries with mild sauce is a hood snack in Chicago. And if you're not familiar with mild sauce, it's kind of like a mixture of barbecue, sriracha, and ketchup. And it's a little bit spicy, a little bit sweet, a little bit savory. And usually the way to get it is when you get it with your sandwich, to have your sandwich doused in it. But I get mine on the side. Why? Because again, I'm basic as AF, and I like my ranch dressing with my fries. But so yes, I was able to get some hood snacks, got the Philly, saw Endgame. So yeah, it was a great weekend.
It was a good weekend for you. I'm very proud of you. Quite proud of you. You earned your marks for this weekend. Very good for you.
Hopefully it was fun for you too.
I got to hang with you. That was a good weekend.
Aw, that's so sweet.
And I got to, hear that Idris Elba got married. So basically, we can knock that Negro off the list. It's like, nope, moving on.
So it was a good weekend because you're just like, oh, Jennifer can't lust over Idris Elba anymore because he got married.
You're still gonna lust over Idris Elba anyway. We know this.
You're
but at the same time, at least we know that there's no chance today that Idris will be, knocking on this door. And if he is, I got something for him. I heard that he was in, because we were watching the promos. I know he's in this Hobbs and Shaw movie as a super genetic looking, freaking whatever.
Oh, no. He said he was Black Superman.
Well, guess what, Black Superman? I got one big foot of kryptonite for your ass.
Okay, I did let it slip when we were watching the trailer when he said, I'm Black Superman. When we were watching Endgame, and then we saw that in the trailer, and I was like, yeah, you are. Yeah. So you heard that. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah. I heard that. Yes, I did. Guess what else? I heard my fingernail, I heard some crackling. Some crack-a-lacking. Yeah. I have a little green eye going. Okay. But at the same time, if Idris does come knocking at the door, I will shake his hand. If he don't give me a couple bones, I might have to kick him up out the door. Left foot, right foot, straight Jackie Chan style.
All right. Well, I think that you're safe from me running off on with Idris. And on that note, we're going to take a quick break and then we'll be right back.
Okay.
Hi, I'm JJ Outlaw, better known as the Gourmet Goober. And when I started my blog 6 years ago, I did so with the intention as I wanted to make sure that there would be a place at a table in food media for diverse voices. So whether I'm telling the story of the most incredible milkshake that you'll ever find in your life in the middle of Gary, Indiana, or educating people on the benefit of hood snacks, I wanted to make sure that I provided a place that we can have those conversations, that we can uplift food and traditions and marginalized communities. And it's something that I hope to continue with my podcast. But I'm here today to tell you about another thing that I'm building that I want you to be a part of, and that's Plum Good Media. Plum Good Media is intended to be a new independent source for books, for podcasts, for other forms of content, and it's going to be launching in 2019. And we'd like you to be part of our journey. All you need to do is go to plumgood.com, that's PLUMGOODE.com, and you can sign up for updates. As we roll out new things, including the launch of the Gourmet Goober podcast, we will let you know on how you can contribute and even be a part of the conversation. So visit Plum Good right now, that's PLUMGOODE.com. Sign up for updates, I promise I won't spam you, and be a part of building an independent media that ensures that everyone has a seat at the table. Thanks again, and thanks for listening to the Gourmet Goober. Now back to the show. And we're back. Welcome back to the Gourmet Goober. I'm JJ Outlaw.
And I'm Big Daddy, that dude.
And if you are probably listening to the first couple seconds of this segment, you probably recognize the iconic scene from Boys in the Hood when Ricky got shot. And that is our segue into our What's Eating You segment. And of course, we can't talk about pop culture without discussing the death of John Singleton. And before we go any further, let me also say to the audience that we did a little bit of a time jump, if you will. So maybe we have the Infinity Gauntlet and have the Time Stone. We actually are picking up recording where we left off a week later.
Team Thanos.
Yep, Team Thanos. But really it's because life happens, and with independent media, sometimes you got to record when you can. But with timing being a thing, within the last week since we've last recorded the first segment, we lost one of our most iconic directors, John Singleton, rest in peace. So we couldn't talk about top culture without talking a little bit about what John Singleton has done, yes, what he's meant to, creators of color, particularly those in the African American, Black community. His work was pretty iconic. And I just, it's so crazy how it happened, because according to reports, he fell into a coma after, he had a stroke, right? On April 17th.
Had a massive stroke.
Right. He had a massive stroke. Embolism. Unfortunately, like so many people, he struggled with high blood pressure and it led to a massive stroke. And then from there, he went into a coma, and then unfortunately earlier this week they announced his passing.
Yeah, they had to, finally the family had to take him off life support, and from there it was a very short journey into his homegoing.
And for those of us, particularly again, who love film, who love pop culture, those who grew up in the 90s and who are Black, he made some of the most iconic films of our time. From Boys in the Hood, which he made and released in 1991, where he actually made history at age 24, not only to become the first African American to ever be nominated for Best director in the Academy Award, but he's actually to date still the youngest person who's ever been nominated for that as well. I mean,
Yes.
that's an incredible achievement. He was only 24 years old. Think about that.
Yeah.
Beyond Boys in the Hood, which most people are familiar with him.
Yeah, kind of introduced us to the likes of Morris Chestnut and Cuba Gooding Jr. Even though heads up to Cuba for, being the little guy in the chair doing Coming to America.
Yes, that is true.
Yeah.
But, think
And
about
Cube.
all the iconic people he's had over the years in his movies. Ice Cube.
Yeah, Cube, and yeah, not only in that, but also in Higher Learning, which is also, I would love to say it's one of my favorite movies, but man, I was like, it kind of jacked up my college life,
I think
like
mine
walk
too.
around, because yeah, my head was in a totally different space after watching that movie.
But he had Tupac in Janet and Poetic Justice, which
Oh yeah,
I think is one of his most underrated movies. It is amazing. And the older I get and the more I watch that film whenever it comes on TV, I'm like, dag, that was just brilliant. And it kind of reminds you of the talent that Pac had, and we just lost him way too soon,
and then there was Janet. Oh
Yes.
my God, gave us a whole different side of Janet. Yeah, I'm just obsessed. I get it, but at the same time, yes, like every time you watch Poetic Justice, there are like a bunch of different layers. Not only did it introduce you, well, it kind of gave you a introspective into like, playful Pac, introspective Pac, but also like the deep thoughts of Janet. And you also had, Academy Award winning, or was it Globe, Regina King.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Regina King was in that movie.
Yes.
But then he directed some really great films like Baby Boy,
Yes.
Higher Learning, we've already talked about, Rosewood, which I think is another film of his that is tragically underrated that really told a story that wasn't really well known.
Yes.
And if you're not familiar with it, it's based on the true story of the 1923 Rosewood Massacre. It happened in Florida, where a white mob just completely wiped out a black town. Again, it's one of those things that you don't hear in your history books, but it really happened, just like Black Wall Street. And it's just, I really admire John because no matter what he worked on, from his original work from Boys in the Hood to his remakes as Shaft, to his last, oh yeah, we're going to talk about Shaft in a minute because that's one of your favorites.
Yeah, even though like, we all know like the original Shaft was off top. Yeah, the Shaft of 2000 with Sam and the group were it was pretty iconic. But anyway, you were saying about John, like I know like watching Rosewood was crazy for me, but also just the fact that he was able to do so many different platforms. Like, we know him as like a movie director, writer, producer, but also, he also did music videos.
He brought up television. He created
Yes.
the Fox. No, it's not Fox. It's FX television drama Snowfall, which if you haven't seen it, it's actually an incredible piece of work. It's a crime drama, and it's built around the crack epidemic as it happened in Los Angeles back in 1983.
Yeah, it was very dense, very layered, at parts very coarse.
Yeah. I really admire John, though, because the thing that John really wanted to make sure that happened is that for so long, there were stories that were made about our communities that wasn't written by us, that we had no hand in producing. And the idea of telling the different types of stories
Yes.
so that it really was part of a renaissance that happened in the 90s that spurred on, in my opinion, some of the great black movie eras that film has ever seen. I mean, from Boys in the Hood to A Rage in Harlem, which is another incredible film that came out around the same time, not directed by Singleton, but again, great film. Of course, Spike was really big back then, and he was jumping with everything. It was just part of a period that really, for the first time, gave blacks not only the chance to see ourselves in film,
Yes.
but to see our stories told in the way that it was from our gaze. And that's really important because I was reading somewhere they were talking about the Academy Award movie, award-winning movie for this year, Green Book.
Mm-hmm.
And how a lot of people were really upset because usually beforehand, when stories were told about us, it's always made from, the white savior point of view, which I know some people bristle at that, but it's a thing. The idea that, our lives were not made whole until someone comes into our communities and shows us the way. It's kind of like, to me, the white savior narrative always bothered me because it's kind of been based on like the movies we saw growing up, like the Noble Savage, like the stuff that my dad used to joke about. Tarzan would go into the village and like kick everyone's ass.
Yeah.
Um,
Basically, all the Africans just showed up and said, "All right, we must bow at Tarzan's feet, and because he will, he will bring the lions and tigers against us." I'm like, well, Africans were there first, like
dude,
doing the lions and tigers work. We knew how
we
to
knew
deal
how
with
that
it.
worked.
Yeah, we were like
We
sitting there
weren't afraid of
playing with
them.
them. Yeah,
But all jokes aside, though, yeah, it was just really a good thing for us as far as just the work he did. And just when you think about all the incredible people who he had a hand in really, putting on the big screen, from Angela Bassett to Tyra Banks to Don Cheadle to Morris Chestnut, Snoop Dogg, Omar Epps. I mean, just I think Tyree Gibson, when he was in Baby Boy, that was like one of his first films, right?
yeah. Tyrese was definitely kind of brought forth in a couple of Singleton's works. But one of the things I will say about like the era of black cinema, it was like because we had so many different like little genres that came through, especially coming from black exploitation and like the previous movies to that. But like we had this era of black filmmaking, which was for the most part like the big boy was Spike during the like late 70s, early 80s. One of the things that John Singleton kind of did was bring it into the 90s into the forefront, not only with Boys in the Hood but also like other movies. But one of the things that I give John Singleton credit for was that a lot of what we saw that was coming from black filmmakers was from the East Coast. Had this gritty but also kind of um, style that was intense, that was almost like asphyxiating, that was like very dense, had a lot of different overtones and whatever. There was like literally like your heart would race like at different points and beats, and it would just be like to a point where you almost couldn't breathe with it. Whereas some of the Singleton matters, like there were points where there was like tense moments or the interaction was coarse, but also one of the things that great, like all these different movies had soundtracks, but one of the things I liked about Singletons was that some of the music in the background, some of the layers of like when you would have like themes with cars, with these small moments when there were like very little noise, was that he was able to take that noise and bring it to the forefront where it was almost to the point where you were almost waiting for something to happen, but you were pleasantly surprised when it didn't, and then you were shocked when it did.
he
That's yeah,
he was a masterful storyteller. He was one of those people who, and I think because of the fact that a lot of the stories that he told was centered around the community that he lived in South Central LA, and some of the people he knew. He he, like many other filmmakers before him, like I would compare him almost to Gordon Parks, who directed the original Shaft.
yes,
He had a really great way of like using the environment around them as part of the storytelling process. And so that you are really kind of enveloped in this world that you may not have been familiar with before. And it's just a tragedy. It's just such a loss. He was only 51 years old,
yeah,
which
it was just scary, and I'm
which
like,
is terrifying.
it's
So
terrifying to us because we're both in our early to, at least for me, mid 40s. But yeah, and the fact that we like to believe we are all healthy beings, but things like blood pressure, diabetes, general heart and wellness conditions, those things that have kind of attack the African American community on the daily, but we either don't notice it or we just kind of ignore it. Those are things that, bring down some of our biggest. I don't want to call John Singleton my hero, but at the same time, he was one of our, one of our guys, one of the guys that kind of, you know, told the story of us, and it kind of was for at least for us, it was a tale.
And you know what? I'm glad you brought that up because his family actually did something really incredible. They put out a statement, of course, announcing his passing. Um, and one of the things that they did is they brought up the fact that, heart, um, blood pressure and high blood pressure is a silent killer, and they were using even the tragedy of his death to bring about something positive. So I just want to read a little bit of what they said. We are sad to relate that John Singleton has died. John passed away peacefully, surrounded by his family and friends. We want to thank the amazing doctors at Cedars-Sinai Hospital for their expert care, kindness, and we want to thank all of John's fans, friends, and colleagues for all of the love and support they showed at this difficult time. John was a prolific, groundbreaking director who changed the game and opened the doors in Hollywood, a world that was just a few miles away, yet worlds away, from the neighborhood he grew up in. John grew up in South Central LA with a love of cinema that showed itself early on. He went on to become one of the most lauded graduates of the USC School of Cinematic Arts. And then they said, which I think is amazing, like many African Americans, Singleton quietly struggled with hypertension. More than 40% of African American men and women have high blood pressure, which also develops early in life and is usually more severe. His family wants to send the message with all to please recognize the symptoms by going to heart.org. So again, first of all, kudos to his family in the midst of this incredible heartbreaking tragedy. I mean, they've lost, a loved one, a father, his mother survived beyond him. So, but even in the midst of all of that, to be thoughtful enough to put out that statement that could very well save a life, that that is amazing. So, want to, send our love and support to them, but also thank them and hoping that this will be something that will spur a lot of people to think about their health. I know, Big Daddy and I, we even had a conversation about me and, making sure that we do what we can as far as self-care, not only making sure we eat right and making that recommitment to ourselves, but even managing stress, which is kind of hard to do because there's just so many microaggressions in a day, let me tell you. But just taking time out just to make sure that you take care of yourself. So, Big Daddy, just curious, what is your favorite John Singleton movie?
My favorite John Singleton movie. Wow.
I know it's hard to choose,
That's the
right?
thing. Like, I don't really have like a straight up and down John Singleton movie that just pushed me right into the forefront. I think it's one of those things where, like, there were elements of every Singleton movie that introduced me to people that I will never forget. Some of them were like bit characters. Some of them were even some of the main characters were, that kind of pushed the story across were huge. But like, in Boys in the Hood, you had, with Dre with Trey and Ricky, but also like you had the complex, tones of Doughboy and Furious, where it's like there are two different men of different ages telling two different stories. They came from the same neighborhood, but also like in Higher Learning, you also had Q, but you also had Busta Rhymes and Omar Epps along with Tyra Banks. But like one of my things was, with Singleton's movies, like in Poetic Justice, not only did you have uh, Justice, but also you have Regina King, who was like in a bit part, but she was kind of playing her little ghetto fineness, but at the same time, she was so complex. But mine will always be. I know this is horrible for me to say, because nothing will ever beat the original Shaft, but the Samuel Jackson version of 2000 was funny, and it was kind of greedy in moments, but nothing will ever encompass the greatness that is Peoples
Peoples.
Hernandez.
I knew you were going to say that. Peoples. Oh my God.
I'm just saying, Jeffrey Wright.
Jeffrey Wright's portrayal of Peoples is everything.
I'm
Y'all,
just
if you
gonna say
haven't
this.
seen it.
Even though it's like comically over the top, I will give Jeffrey Wright this right now. Jeffrey Wright as an actor is, I know I'm gonna catch hell for saying this, is on par, not so much with the people's part, but like Jeffrey Wright as an actor is on par with some of the greatest African American actors out there. I'm putting this guy up there with Denzel.
Oh, yeah.
I'm putting him out there with, with the guys like Cheadle, with the Fridays. And it's one of those things because Jeffrey Wright will literally walk into any scene and he can be the most unassuming character when you first see him. But by the time you're done, you will know that he was there.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I know that, like I said, Peoples Hernandez was comically over the top, but at the same time, he literally walked in there and played this dude, People's new Peoples. I'm just saying. I know that was just me, but saying Peoples was one of those guys that was a little crazy. He wanted to play a little Tony Montana, but he could draw it back at points. He wasn't going over the top like Pacino was, but at the same time, he was still comically fucked in the head.
No, I agree with you. Jeffrey Wright is one of those people. He's always really been great in encompassing every role. Like, I mean, even the roles that have been portrayed by other people, for example, the James Bond franchise. And by the way, just as a side note, I have seen every Bond film that has ever been made. I am like obsessed. I've been obsessed since I was a kid. Never seen Mary Poppins, but I've seen Dr. No 5 times.
Okay. Also, here's my thing.
Right.
Since you are a James Bond fan,
Right.
was Jeffrey Wright in one of the Bond films?
Well, you know he was in one of the Bond. He was Felix.
There you go.
I was getting to that.
Okay, never mind.
And Felix have been played by other people. And I've read somewhere that some people credit him as being the first Black Felix, which is not true. The first Black Felix was Bernie Casey.
Yes.
Rest in peace.
Allah.
But no, even in a role that has been taken over by different people from Bernie Casey to Jack Lord, his version of
Felix.
Of Felix Leitner in the new James Bond films with Daniel Craig is incredibly nuanced. And, all you have to see is his character introduction in Casino Royale just to kind of see how he totally encompassed that role and made it his own. So, shout out to Jeffrey Wright. I knew you were going to say Shaft because we saw Shaft together and my husband giggled like a kid. He loved that movie. Every time it's on, he's just like, it's people. I was like, yeah, I know. I don't know if I have a favorite John Singleton movie too. I think all of them resonate with me for different reasons. I have to say, and going back to what you said about Higher Learning earlier in the segment, Higher Learning came out when we were both in college, and it really resonated with me then because of the fact that it talked about, and you talked about the different characters of color from Tyra Banks to Cube to Omar Epps, and the different range of experiences those Black characters had in going to a majority white institution, which in some ways it is kind of awkward if you've never had that experience. I know some people have gone to HBCUs, have never gone to college, but at the time in which, Big Daddy and I were both in college and this movie came out, many of the scenes that I saw in the film really resonated with me. The idea of identity and do you fit in and, proving yourself that you belong in this space.
Yes.
That's sometimes, unfortunately, due to misconception about what it is to be Black in America back then, or even now, would put you in a college in order to excel. The other thing that really resonated me, and I was thinking about this after John's passing, is when you think about the ending of Higher Learning with the shooting.
Yes.
And it was really shocking to audiences because that was something that was unthinkable back in 1995. And then compare it to what happened today, and unfortunately some of the rise of intolerance that we're experiencing now. And I was just like, wow, damn, he was a prophet.
Yeah, some of his
That's
prophets,
kind
but
of
yeah,
very
he
scary.
one of the things, yeah, is it was a foretelling of not only shooting on in elementary school, God forgive us, uh, high school, and especially college campuses like Northern Illinois, Virginia, uh, UCLA, USC, and whatnot. But and some of the other campuses around the country. But just the fact that we live our lives as a bunch of different atoms and beings, like moving around, and some of us coexist together, some of us are just kind of like passing ships or whatever, but we are all in a roundabout way, we're all open marks to one person who just is disassociated from the system or disassociated from like these beings that at any point someone could ultimately either lose it or is ultimately just ready just to just say, you know what, screw it. If I go, you all go. But that's the thing, we as a people, and I'm not trying to like get heavy with this or uh reinstate this on John Singleton's passing, but just as a side note, that we as a people, we're all just trying to make it through days and hours and whatever, but just the fact that we got to do better. We, the effects of what happens when someone disassociates themselves or tries to create chaos.
Yeah.
That not only is there do these occurrences happen, but also there are repercussions from it, and that's one of the things that kind of, and maybe in a roundabout way, like was part of Singleton's vision, but also there are repercussions. There are people who have to live with these issues or these occurrences that are devastating for lives to come or for years to come.
And maybe
Sorry, I know
that's
it's a heavy note.
no. But I think you're right. I mean, I think going back to telling our own stories. I mean, even when you think about poetic justice and how Justice lost her, her boyfriend
Yes.
and how she was still in mourning and showing the after effects of that. And going back to my favorite John Singleton movies, I really liked that aspect of poetic justice because speaking as a black woman and how we are often portrayed on film, the idea of not being able to show the levels behind things that we all share as human beings, like grief and learning how to deal with that in the mourning process and just that whole range of emotion that unfortunately when black women are often portrayed in film, particularly
Mm-hmm.
by people who are not familiar with our stories,
Yes.
we're often relegated to a stereotype of the angry black woman or the
Or
person
the
with an attitude.
or the Superwoman.
Right. And Justice was a character that she went through a whole range of emotions.
Yes.
And we were able to see that on film. And for me, that was groundbreaking. So I was really kind of thankful that he did that. So shout out to John Singleton. I know that we have other things to talk about, but his passing was such a shock for so many of us. We wanted to really give a moment just to kind of honor him and his memory and to thank him for really opening the door for so many storytellers, black content creators. He really paved the way for a whole generation of people.
And the fact that within his filmmaking career, he worked with a lot of people who, even when he had a chance to like work with them, some of them grew to be huge stars. Some of them were already huge stars at the point in which they worked with him. But just the fact that as they walked away, he made their work better.
And, closing out this part of the segment before we move on, I think the great way to kind of summarize what he meant to so many people was Ice Cube, who worked with John Singleton again in Boys in the Hood and Higher Learning. When he learned of his passing, he said this. There are no words to express how sad I am to lose my brother, friend, and mentor. He loved to bring the Black experience to the world.
Yay, yay.
Yeah,
That's
so
all I got.
rest in peace, John. Thank you for that. And since we're talking about passing of people that really meant a lot to the experience, one other person who passed away recently, only they just honored him within the past couple weeks on camera, is actor Kristoff St. John. And if you're not familiar with him, he played many characters. He was an actor since he was a teenager. He was in shows like The Cosby Show and A Different World. But he's best known for the character he portrayed for many decades on The Young and the Restless as Neil Winters. And for those of us, again, who grew up in the 80s and the 90s, he represented something that really wasn't seen on daytime television before, where he was a character. One, he was an African American character at a time where most of daytime television was really, really white, where they didn't have a lot of diversity at all. Or if they do have it, and they're passing on as a stereotype. So, for example, The Young and the Restless, which I grew up watching, shout out to Miss Darce who let me watch it when I was 4 and she babysat me. But for many years, the only character of color they had was the abbot's maid, who was Mimi.
Yes.
And Mimi hardly had any lines. Mimi was only there to serve them breakfast or make dinner for the abbots. And then one day, Neil Winters and a whole host of people came in. And it actually created, eventually, Neil got together with Drew.
Drusilla, who was Mamie's niece.
Yes. And they were one of the first black couples on daytime television. And it was just amazing just to see that representation and to see that, the rage of experience that represented in Black love. It was really great storytelling. And the thing that was also interesting about Neil is they allowed him to be more than just a stereotype. So he had feelings. He struggled through alcoholism and addiction. He went through blindness. He lost his wife, so you saw him going through the grieving process. But then you also see him get involved in industry and starting businesses and running companies and
become a foster dad.
Yeah, and
starting a music business, a charity foundation.
Right, doing a charity foundation where he worked with addicts and things like that. I think it's really great to honor him because of the fact that when he passed, a lot of the news media was just really shocked by the outpouring of emotion, particularly from communities of color and the Black community, because he had meant so much, that character really meant a lot. Because again, growing up watching television, and I realized that soap operas is not a thing like it used to be, but back in the day, it was like a thing. Like I don't know if I should share this, but my husband,
that would be me.
Big Daddy, when we met in college, he used to plan his schedule around The Young and the Restless. He would plan classes around it.
Okay, so it's back on me with this.
This was before the internet, so it's not like he could get like an update. Okay?
This isn't like I could run in and I could binge watch any of this. My thing was I didn't start as early as my wife involving myself in The Young and Restless, but during the springs and summers, from the time I was 13 up till even this moment, that I would try my best to watch The Young and the Restless every day if I could. And yes, in college, I watched. I pretty much planned every single class around and lunch hours around The Young and the Restless. And yes, during an internship, I worked at a CBS affiliate in Ohio, and lunch hour was at 12:30. So I would be watching The Young and the Restless from 12:30 to 1:30. And yes, the fact that my portion of dealing with Neil Ellis Winters was the fact that he, if for no other reason, because there were a whole bunch of characters that have come through that show and some other shows like that. But one of the things that I respected so much about Neil Winters was that yes, he came, he had a Stanford education, and yes, he came from hard scrabble, but also that he maintained a little bit of his a lot of his upbringing, but also he was not going to let that define him. But also in dealing with his brother, with his wife's sister, and with his children and grandchildren, the fact that he was not above showing them his the way that he grew as a
Yeah.
person, how he evolved during with this story. And if one of the things I will always say about Kristoff St. John, I'm not trying to like belabor this or keep like take this long, but one of the things I will always respect about Kristoff St. John was that he was a spirit. He was a man of focus when he was on set, and when I was watching some of the retrospective towards him, was that he could not only show his serious side, that he was always, for the most part, present, but also the fact that he has humor set. He was always goofing off and willing to every deal with every other actor, actress on scene and character and be able to bring them close to him with not only like physical hugs, with not only like daps, handshakes, but also the fact that he made every person in the scene with him act.
Right.
And not only act like as a person, but act normal. Act as a person who really belonged in that scene, who really was going to bring something of character to that scene. One of the things I will always respect about Kristoff St. John was the fact that he, as a person, was always fluid, always learning, always, whether it be through book, whether it be through street, whether it be through religion, through spirituality, that he was always there and always present. And the fact that he is not there anymore almost is like losing an uncle, a cousin, whatever. It's just like you just have this missing part of your life, and that will always, I don't know, bother me. Sorry.
Well, one thing that I got from the retrospective, and they recently aired a retrospective honoring his life on The Young and the Restless. Just some facts about Kristoff that I think is interesting. He played the character of Neil Winters for 25 years. In fact, no other African American actor had appeared on The Young and the Restless more than St. John. So
Mm.
again, he was a trailblazer in his own right, but he's also been acting since he was 10. So
Mm.
he was in Roots the Next Generation. He actually made an appearance in Happy Days. He was on The Cosby Show. Um, and over the course of his career, he won 11 Daytime Emmy nominations, 2 actual Emmy Awards, and 10 NAACP Awards. So, again, very accomplished actor, not without trouble in his life. As we know, he tragically lost his son, Julian, by suicide in 2014, and that affected him greatly. But since his passing, he'll be missed. He was a person in the Hollywood perspective that I don't think a lot of people give him credit because, again, you know, sometimes it's easy to belittle the work of daytime television and the work they do, especially since we live in a world that, when you think about it, there were like hours and hours of soap operas on when we were kids. Now there's only, I think, 4 left. The
Yeah.
Bold and the Beautiful, The Young and the Restless, Days of Our Lives, and then General Hospital. Those are it. Those are the only 4 that are left. I always laugh when they have daytime Emmy nominations because, like, 1, that's still a thing. But 2, it's kind of funny because I'm just like, dude, you only have 4 to choose from as
Yeah, it's
far
like
as the
they're
best
rotating
drama.
between like, yeah, you're gonna win, you get an Emmy, you get an
There's
Emmy.
not a surprise who gets nominated for best drama. There's only 4.
Yeah, I was like watching the Bold and Beautiful the other day, and we got like what Wayne Brady, who's like hosting Let's Make a Deal. So basically, you're gonna show up on the daytime Emmys and like you're gonna try to get not only daytime Emmy for a talk show host, but also for trying to act up in the Bold and the Beautiful for a hot minute.
The point I'm trying to make is, and
I get
yes,
it.
that is funny. But all jokes aside, though,
Wait a minute, and Cheryl Underwood. I forgot about Cheryl.
oh
Anyway,
yeah,
sorry.
Cheryl Underwood too. You're so silly.
Hey, I gotta represent my
We are
people.
talking about Kristoff.
I got it. I'm with you.
But all jokes aside, though, seriously, he will definitely be missed. His character was definitely a trailblazer as far as bringing in diversity to a segment of television that it was greatly lacking. And there's so many things that are on television now that wouldn't be there without his influence. So
Yeah,
shout
it's
out
like
to
the
him as well.
precursor to telenovelas. You know,
Well,
he
no,
really was.
telenovelas were around a lot longer than
I know
that.
they were, but just the fact that like that's kind of where we are with soap operas now.
Well, maybe The Bold and the Beautiful and how they tell their story. But all jokes aside, though, I mean, even now, going back to Young and the Restless, and they have, okay, this is me. Okay, I still watch the Young and the Restless. Don't, don't criticize me, folks. But
I,
even the Rosales family that's on it now, they probably wouldn't be on there if it wasn't for the influence of Neil Winters and his family, and the fact that for the people who produced the show, seeing that yes,
mm,
we can bring in diverse faces and people can be invested in those stories. And I think the bottom line is that is the influence that he has left daytime television with, and he did it with integrity and an incredible acting style, so he will be missed.
yeah, I'll give him that. He was a steady bridge.
So, moving on, because we don't want things to just be overwhelmingly sad. So, the other big thing we wanted to talk about this week, outside of that, is, of course, the Billboard Music Awards and the advent of
That's the thing.
Maychella. Maychella.
Maychella.
Mayocella.
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 Yeah, that's gonna be the hashtag for the week.
Oh
Mayochella.
no. And if you're not familiar with that, what that refers to, I
Well,
think
let's start from the origin.
let's start with an origin. That's a good thing. So last week, on last week's podcast, well, I guess it's 2 weeks ago, we talked about Homecoming and the incredible work that Beyonce did in putting that together. It's a love letter to HBCUs, and she did it in a very distinctive style that called back to the importance of, bands to that culture and things like that. Um, and one of the things that she did in order to kind of bring attention, and it was a fantastic start. If you've not, first of all, seriously, if you guys have not seen Homecoming on Netflix, check it out because you can kind of see the behind the scenes of what it took for her to put Baychella together. But there were some things that were very distinctive in the beginning of that concert, including, a sound of a whistle, a marching band, and even how they got in formation. It was incredible.
Not just the marching band, the band.
Yes, the band itself.
Yeah, the group of dancers, singers, instrumentalists that came in and they put it on. They put in, work with this, and that is one of the signatures, as you will, as we talked about with HBCU bands. Sometimes when you show up for a football game, you have, your typical Division One, FCS, as you will, games also. They have great, rivalries and actual games being played, and like, but at some HBCUs, like, okay, yeah, you can go see Grambling, Southern, Jackson State. You're going there, if your kid or like your homie is like, playing, defensive back or is, throwing 40 yards as a quarterback, whatever, but like you showing up at an HBCU or at like, a classic, you going for the band. That's just all there is to it. And one of the things that Beyonce and the crew tried to do was replicate some of the feeling of Homecoming with the band, the Battle of the Bands, as you will.
Right. So, anyway.
That's going to be a tone for this.
So, in the vein of imitation is not always the best form
Some
of flattery. Um, the Billboard Music Awards, which, just as a side note, I didn't watch because I'm just not interested in that. But
That's
I
the
still
thing.
work on social media as part of my job. So after the Billboard Music Award happened, I opened up Twitter to set up some things for work, and I noticed that Mayochella is trending. And apparently, Taylor Swift decided to open up the Billboard Music Awards, and she claims it's not a homage to Beyonce's Homecoming. But if you see the opening of Beyonce's Coachella performance and you compare it to the opening of Taylor Swift's performance, there are more than just a few similarities that are there. And let me just say that the remake isn't as good as the original for many, many reasons.
No, you mean like when Taylor Swift tried to do September?
Oh God! Oh my God! First of all, I wasn't gonna go there, but
I went there and
the hell, the fuck! I remember when that came out. I think I told you, and I was just like, "This is violence.
This is just an aberration."
This is auditory. It's like she took the happiest song in the world and she took it. Oh,
she took a bat to it. I will, and like I said, no disrespect to.
Look, I'm gonna disrespect her for that. Okay.
Okay.
Girl, you slobbered that with mayo. That was the most basic ass remake ever. It was terrible.
Yeah, basic was a word.
See, I wasn't even gonna go there. Okay. And okay.
I went there and took clip notes.
Let's take a step back because I know a lot of people are like, I don't know why this is a thing. I don't know why the Beehive, because the Beehive went in. When
of course, I'm trying to avoid the Beehive, but yes.
No, the Beehive, when they saw what happened and how she opened that up, they went in on the imitation. And a lot of people were like, well, I don't know why it's a big deal. And she's used marching bands in her music before. But I think, taking a step back, for me, it struck a nerve, not necessarily because I'm a member of the Beehive, although, quite frankly, if I was in Taylor Swift's team, if Beyonce had dropped off Homecoming and a whole ass live album and a documentary showing this, I would go back to Miss Tay-Tay and say, perhaps we should do something a little different with your opening.
Yeah, I'm like,
maybe
okay,
you should change it up a bit.
You can show up. I mean, okay, granted, if
this
you
at
one point, yes, if at one point you, or at some points, like during your performances, yes, you show up with a marching band and you perform, with such band, that's great and all, but your timing really is terrible because you're trying to, you seem, if you really are doing this on the instant, to do this really in the wake of the Gale storm that was Beyonce's Homecoming and the Netflix tape behind it. You really didn't make, show and prove on that move.
That was a bad decision.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, again, going back to, people are like, why are you making such a big deal of this? But really it goes back to a history that has existed in the music industry for almost a generation of appropriating and taking the hard work and creativity of musicians of color, particularly Black musicians, and changing it into something that is often seen as more palatable to general audiences. And it goes the whole spectrum from as far back as Pat Boone stealing Tutti Frutti from Little Richard.
Woo!
Oh my God. Which, by the way,
I'm the innovator. I'm the creator. I made this. Rock and roll would be nothing without me.
Dude.
I scared the dog out of the room. Bear's like, wait a minute, I don't know where to go with this.
Our dog is like sitting next to us, watching us calmly record this podcast. And my husband decided to imitate Little Richard, and the dog just goes flying out. He's like, I'm out.
Bear's like, I'm out. I won't know this, but yes, you were saying.
But it goes from Pat Boone shamelessly, and he wasn't the only audience, but only person that was guilty of it back in the day, but he was one that, quite frankly,
he was the biggest name with it.
He just openly stole like other artists' work and then put it out as his own. And those artists didn't get paid for it. To even now, where I read this article and I tweeted about it, and it's kind of low key going viral now. And it was about the fact that there's people who give Ariana Grande and this other artist who I'll admit I'm not familiar with this new form of so-called music that is called whispercore.
Whispercore?
Whispercore. Uprux had written about it, and a lot of people were just like, no, Satan, not today. And the whole idea behind whispercore is that it's people that, like Ariana Grande, to Taylor Swift's "Look What You Make Me Do," which was a half-spoken chorus, they said, instead of a sung-through hook. And they had musicians that basically, they don't belt out as much as they use their lower octave, almost whispering as they sing. And we're like, dude, Janet has been doing that for decades. And then the Queen, Janet Jackson. How can you, ignore that? There are lots of singers who have done that before Ariana Grande. How can you Columbus that? But it happens over and over again. And I think for our community especially, but for communities of color, that's really at the heart of what appropriation and the problem with appropriation really is. It's taking our creativity, taking ownership of that, putting it out in mass quantities, often in spaces where there aren't creators of color to be able to push back with.
Yes.
And to profit from that. And it's just, to see that repeated over and over again in history in many different creative forms, I think in part is a segment of what really people were ticked off, because let's face it, Beyonce gonna be fine. Beyonce probably watched that whole mess that happened and said, girl, please, called Blue in the room and was taking a look at it, and they're like, you see what this woman's doing? Yep. See it? Yeah.
Yeah, but once again, it's hardcore, but at the same time, it's like, I only saw little bits of this little thing, and I'm trying to be as efficient as I can with this, but okay, I know you tried to add some personality to this performance and whatever. Maybe it's because I'm not part of this Taylor Swift group, but at the same time, if you're gonna do it right. If you're gonna run in and do this Mayochella type version, throw some tartar on that shit. Because I'm like, you came in, you just went do with your little band. I'm like, I went back, and as Jennifer informed me about this, I went back and I'm listening to Beyonce's version, and I'm thinking, man, bass drum. Come on now. You got people up in there who are throwing bass on it, who have some thump in it, who are on the 2s and 4s.
Yeah, you know what? You brought that up because I swear there was a couple of drummers that was on the 1s and 3s. I'm like, how do you drum on the 1s and 3s?
Yeah, I'm like, can you even
how does that happen?
Where are the hand claps? The hand claps are off too.
Oh my god!
What the hell?
It was really sad, but yeah, there wasn't a bass drum, and we were kidding around. It was just like I could imagine rehearsal, bring in the bass. No, that's too spicy.
Yeah,
that's too much salt. We need to take that out.
Yeah, I'm like, you trying to bring women? You
like
walked in with pop, you took pop. I'm sorry, this was all you.
No, go and Google. I was about to say it's like the musical equivalent of like what we talked about the last podcast, the 20-pound turkey with the 2.5 teaspoons of seasoning.
Yeah, like you showed up and you took something straight from Popeyes, and you tried to make that thing KFC and ended up with Boston Market.
Ooh.
Yeah, I went there.
That's cold.
I'm saying, and not just regular Boston Market, like cold Boston Market, chicken.
Not day old Boston Market.
Day old Boston Market chicken. with jacked up
Mm.
green peas.
Okay, I'm wiping my eyes now because I'm crying. I'm laughing. Sorry, you.
I'm sorry. I'm just like I like I said, I'm not part of this beehive. I ain't got no funk on this, but at the same time, come on, bruh.
I,
Oh, I'm
I
sorry, sis. I'm sorry. Come on, girlfriend. You got to give me something. At least have
uh,
some, some girl in the back, because I don't want to piss off, like, all the Latino sisters that may have been involved with this. But at the same time, you come on, help family out here. I'm just saying,
honestly,
it was a nice tribe, and I guess maybe for the Billboard Awards, I guess it was passing, but if you brought that to my neighborhood, we would like literally the sisters from like down the street at the local high school would be on stage they'd be upstaging you right now.
I think that's a great
The
equivalency.
Missy Elliott of this group would be
Ooh,
running through here, tearing up your set.
yeah. And you know what? I'm kind of liking the comparison. So yeah, it wasn't the Popeyes version of Beyonce.
It
It wasn't the KFC version. It's the Dale Boston Market version.
was the CC's pizza version.
Ooh, no, 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 no! Stop it.
No disrespect to CC's pizza, but
Ooh. So, yeah, that was a thing.
guess I'm not even getting CC sponsorship with this either. But
No, I don't think so. That's okay. But yeah, it it's just disappointing because again, I think it demonstrates the further appropriation of culture um without giving credit. And I think that's disappointing because I think you know what, there's so many layers to that and it's we should probably do like another show on it,
we will.
but yeah, shout out to the Beehive for calling out. And if you've not seen some of the tweets about Mayochella,
Mm.
go to Twitter and look it up because Black Panther did not disappoint. They decided to let Taylor know that, perhaps imitation again is not the sincerest form of flattery.
Well, some of them had to make sure that they weren't getting them mixed up with Katy Perry, but
What?
yeah, some of the people were getting Taylor Swift mixed up with Katy Perry.
I didn't know that, but that's a problem.
But that's okay. I understand the general gist and nothing against Katy Perry, but I was like, you just dragging all kind of people into this mess.
Yeah, but look up the tweets. It's a brilliant hashtag Mayocello. So it actually called it Diet Lemonade instead of Beyonce's Lemonade, which is a whole list of shade. But yeah,
Couldn't you
it's
bring women to the iced tea and lemonade they were doing the Annie Palmer?
oh, and my favorite instead of homecoming is homegoing.
Oh wow. Well, I was
Just
about to
whole
say
lot of shade.
that can wait a minute. Despite like the discussion we were having previously, the point that's hardcore.
But
But yeah, that's I'm the innovator. I'm the creator. I'm sorry, Bear's gone.
you just terrified our dog.
He's now under the table like
Oh, we're sorry,
Daddy,
Bear Boo.
Daddy,
Daddy gets a little over carried away.
Daddy, don't do that. It makes me not feel good. And please don't mess up the table.
So, on that note, maybe this is a good time to draw to a close. But as always, before we end our What's Eating Us segment, what was the
Uh,
best thing that you had to eat this week?
uh, the best thing I ate this week.
Yes.
I admit I went to Elephant and Castle in Chicago on two
Hmm.
occasions.
On two occasions.
Yes, first time was for me. I just happened, my friend did partake of certain foods, and I went partook of some of the foods. I got my first chance to hit the poutine Americanized, um, which is basically, and my wife will explain this better, because she was able to enjoy it on the second turn. I picked it up specifically for her because she caught feelings when she heard that I went and picked up this poutine.
Well, I'm obsessed with poutine.
Yes, you are. And I admit that I had to do a correction because husbands every once in a while have to do a correction when there have been things that have been inflicted upon the wife, like when the husband go and get some food and didn't share. So I went and got this poutine and hooked her up. But yeah, the poutine was probably the best thing I had this week.
Yeah, poutine is amazing. If you're not familiar with poutine, um, it's actually a Canadian dish. In fact, we went to Canada for the first time last year, and we had a chance to try it, and it is amazing. It's basically basic poutine, if you could call it that, because it just tastes anything but basic. And my husband can tell you, I went on a poutine hunt in Toronto last year. Seriously, every place we could. Get some poutine! Jennifer, stop. You just had some. Get some poutine! Okay. It's French fries topped with cheese curds, sometimes with bacon, and chives, and has this incredible gravy. There's different versions of it. The version that he bought from Elephant and Castle, which, by the way, if you're not familiar, they do have in several locations outside of Chicago, but it's basically like a form of an English pub.
Yeah.
And they have something that's in their restaurant called a poutineery. So he gave me this poutine box of poutine with the works, and it had bacon, and it had cheese, and it had sour cream, and it was just a monstrosity from the gods, and I loved every bit of it.
Yeah,
And
Jennifer went to town on that, the cheese and the tomatoes.
when he brought it home, seriously, at night, I was like, I don't care if I have to go to work the next day. I just ate it. It was fabulous. But yeah, shout out to the people there. That's probably the best thing I had to eat this week too. Although I wanted to also say hey to Anthony from Lyft.
But
He one of the reasons why I started the Gourmet Goober is that ever since I was a kid, I don't know why, I've always found myself having really great conversations when it comes to food. And I don't know, just random strangers have always just approached me and just like giving me recipes in the middle of the mall. Or I can be like grocery shopping and someone could pull me over and say, hey, have you heard of ricotta? This will change your life. I mean, I've just been really blessed. And that's part of the reason why I wanted to share the stories on the blog. So anyway, keeping in that vein,
and Barry go last in the poutine.
You didn't have to tell me that. Now I'm mad. Why did you eat the last of the poutine? That was mommy's.
That was probably his get back from me scaring me.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for that. Anyway, as I was saying, so I was in a Lyft on Friday and wanted to give Anthony a shout out and the best thing we've eaten segment. Because actually, I'm so obsessed, this sounds like the best thing I'm going to eat. But he was tipping me up to something called a Filipino breakfast. And there's a place that's famous for it in Chicago called Uncle Mike's.
Okay.
So we got to try this sometime because Filipino breakfast, and there's like eggs, and there's hash brown, and there's rice. There's a soup, believe it or not, that comes with it. And then you get your choice of everything from like Spam to like pork chops and skirt steak and just a whole host of stuff that this restaurant is known for. And I know you're making a face from Spam, but
yeah, all I heard was Spam. That's all. Wait, what?
Spam was one of the choices. I told you about that.
Okay.
But the Peruvian breakfast sounds epic. And so I was so excited about Anthony. I was like, oh my gosh, we have like a best thing we've eaten segment for this podcast. I'm going to actually like try that, and hopefully it'll be in next week's segment. But definitely the poutine, and shout out to you for giving me the poutine because that was everything and I really loved it. So thank you. So in closing, we are going to wrap up the Gourmet Goober. I want to thank everyone for listening. Before I do, there's one more thing I wanted to say. For those of you who heard last week's episode, you may have heard a different theme song. The one that starts out this episode, and it will be every episode, it's actually taken from a really great album that was put out years and years ago by a group. They only made one album before they disbanded and did other things. Daptone Records. It's called Thunder Chicken, which I love the name. You know me, I'm just weird enough to love it. First of all, if you hear Thunder Kitchen, which you can actually hear on Spotify, along with us, we're on Spotify now, in iTunes, ha ha ha. But anyway, going back to Thunder Chicken, it's a great album. It's like really funky, and it has like songs. All the songs are like food related, so it's like Chico's Barnyard. Joseph's Popcorn is another bop on there I really love.
Oh, yeah.
Thomas loves Joseph's Popcorn too. But, yeah, when I heard the song years ago, and again, this is an old album, and I was dreaming up the Gourmet Goober as a podcast, I actually emailed Daptone Records and I explained to them what I was going to do. And I said, is it okay if we use segments from Thunder Chicken? And they said yes. They emailed me back and they said, yeah, go ahead and let us know when the podcast launches and give us a shout out. So it's been about, 4 or 5 years later?
Yes.
But I wanted to say thank you guys and we're so excited. So that's our new theme song. So anyway, Big Daddy, where can they find you online?
They can find me on...
Oh, excuse me.
They can find me on the Twitter at TOutlaw. Once again, that's at TOutlaw, OUTLAW. And on Instagram at TOutlaw, Josie Wells. Once again, TOutlaw, Josie Wells. Huh? Shut up. I'm the innovator! Go ahead.
Okay, little Richard. And for me, you can find me always on the Twitter machines. I'm at JJ Outlaw. You can find me on Instagram at Gourmet Goober. If you wanted to hit up some of our classic, I'm joking here, classic blog features. But anyway, some of the past work we did, some of our television appearances and stuff is on there too. You can go to thegourmetgoober.com. Make sure to add the. So thegourmetgoober.com. You can catch us there. You can always hit up my other work as well. I'm at jjoutlaw.com. So for both of us, wanted to say thank you for listening, and we'll catch you next time on The Gourmet Goober.
I'm the original.